First game, I think we got hammered about 10-1. And what stuck in my mind was the goalkeeper was having a fag during the kickabout at the start. I thought, well, fair enough, it's casual football. The game kicked off, looked back, and he was still having a fag. I thought, he's going to put that away in a minute. They started attacking. I thought, surely he's going to put his fag down. And it wasn't until they were about outside the 18-yard box that he tried to balance it on the side of the net. There were several corners when he was still smoking as the ball came across, and he'd wave at it. So more and more I was realising what the whole ethos of the team was going to be, which kind of made it, even though we got beat 10-1 in that game, it was probably one of the most enjoyable games I've played in.
The early games, there's always a bit of a struggle getting a team together, and you'd turn up in the car park and there'd be 6 that turned up.
The enjoyment was there on a Sunday morning after what was usually a fairly hefty Saturday night out. Most people were a bit dusty. We'd have to grab random people walking past and ask them if they want a game from time to time. As long as they had 2 legs and could walk about, they generally were up for a contract for the season.
Our objective was not to lose by a certain amount of goals. So depending on how many players we had, we say if we can lose only by 4 goals, then we've succeeded for that day.
Well, my role was in those early days, first matches, centre of defence. So alongside me was Pete Stillman, absolute rock of a man. Unfortunately, he had his granny's knees, but super reliable.
We didn't bother trying to go in their half. We just tried to defend as much as possible. And at the end of the game, when we'd kept it to 4-0 or 5-1, we were like, results.
On the other side, we had Chris. He was just a legend, but presented some challenges as a member of the defence. In that era, back in mid-90s, a relatively new concept was the overlapping fullback, and Chris was into this. So you would see him in those early games, steaming up the flank, screaming for the ball, which was great. But the problem for us was the next time we'd see Chris was usually when we were kicking off after conceding yet another goal, because he never returned from those forays.
Harry Mottram was great at publicity and getting the message out there about the Casuals League, because we needed people to know about us to enter teams, and we got an interview on Radio Bristol with I think it was John Turner about the whole Casuals League thing. We sort of really bigged it up, but we made a few comments that we shouldn't have done. I remember him saying to me, so how do you feel? What's it like playing these games on Sunday morning? I said, well, it can be a bit hazardous if you get caught late by some oik from Hartcliffe. And I said this on air, not thinking that I'd offend anybody. Of course, Red Star Bedminster had a player from Hartcliffe, and he'd already played Harry with the Corinthians and gone up to Harry and pushed him in the chest and said, "Oi, I'm that oik from Hartcliffe." So we were marked men, me and Harry. And when it was our turn to play them that season, the guy in question had been involved with some foul or incident on the pitch, a tussle. And he was being a bit stroppy and a bit babyish. So I just said, just because you didn't get the ball, which is the most innocuous comment. He heard it from about 100 yards away because he was waiting for me, for his opportunity. And he suddenly came storming towards me in a straight line, like a charging bull. And I had a choice. I thought, I stand my ground, and as long as I can, and if he gets within a certain distance of me, I'm just going to run. And he crossed that point, so I was just herring around the pitch and around the outside of the pitch, and I think he just saw it as a little bit beneath his dignity to chase me. So thankfully I got off lightly on that one, but I did have some other incidents with the same guy every time he played me. He would always be incredibly rude, probably I deserved it, but he'd always say things like, he was so disdainful towards me, rather than, if I had the ball, rather than him tackle me or whatever, he would just say, "Fuck off out the way, you fat cunt."
Midfield were the Scouse Mafia. They bossed it in the midfield. Of course, Andy Layden, the world's smallest centre forward, hugely confident in his own abilities. And the one thing that always confused me was, after the games, Andy would like to take you through his performance, and particularly his goal-scoring escapades. And I was always slightly, given that I played in these games, I couldn't quite reconcile his description with either the quantity or quality of goals. that he was describing.
I remember my first season very well because we were bottom of the league with no points, which is pretty embarrassing.
You know, we were bottom of the league, bottom of the first division, bottom of the second division, ended up bottom of the third division, but we still turned up every Sunday and enjoyed it.
We had some good players though. We just didn't have many of them turning up every week.